Peter Elgar has been arraigned on 2 charges. To the first, a charge of attempting to obtain money by deception, he has pleaded guilty. To the second, he's pleaded not guilty. The full charge against the defendant is a long and involved one, as set out in the Criminal Damage Act of 1971. But in simplest terms, one word will suffice: arson. The prosecution has just called its first witness, Station Officer Roy Pettit of Fulchester Fire Brigade.
Received a shout to a fire at number 17 Manning Street.
You received a shout, you say?
Yes, my lord, excuse me. I should say we received a call from Command Control.
Thank you.
To a fire at number 17 Manning Street, Fulchester. The pump escape and the pump, with myself in charge, were ordered. We arrived at the address at 20:59 hours, at which time half the ground floor of number 17 was well alight.
Yes, this was a shop known as Elgar and Stroud Antique and Fine Furniture Dealers.
That's correct.
Now, you got there in 4 minutes. That's very good going, isn't it?
Yes. There was fortunately very little traffic at that time of evening. I was first on the scene, and I rang the bells and banged on both front doors.
Both front doors?
And one to the shop and one to the flats above. There was no one in the shop, so we had to effect an entry.
Yes, how did you effect an entry?
By forcing both the locks on the front door.
The door being locked from the outside?
Oh, yes, my lord. Shops are always locked from the outside.
Unless, of course, the proprietor lives on the premises.
Well, that's true.
Yes, I'm grateful to your lordship for mentioning this. The fact that the front door was securely locked from the outside is significant. Please carry on, Mr. Pettit.
I ordered 2 hose-reel jets to be laid out and a message to be sent by radio. Make pumps 4, persons reported.
Persons reported?
In my opinion, it was not 100% sure that everyone was out of the building.
So what did you do about that?
I sent a couple of BA men up to ventilate and search.
Yes, BA men.
And members of the crew with breathing apparatus.
Yes.
There was a lot of smoke going up the staircase. Now, it was at this time that a lady's head appeared at one of the windows on the 2nd floor. She must have had her front door open because the smoke going upstairs was coming out of her window. She was in a panic. We shouted at her not to jump, that we'd have a ladder up to her in no time, but there was too much noise. Maybe she didn't hear us. She jumped. One of my crew tried to break her fall, and I think he did, slightly, but she still hit the pavement and was seriously injured.
Yes. Am I right in saying that this lady was the only person to suffer injury as a result of the fire?
That's correct.
But had it not been for the prompt arrival and action of the fire brigade, the steps leading up to the flats above could have caught fire and all the tenants' lives would have been in danger.
My lord, my learned friend is leading the witness and also asking him to conjecture.
Yes, that is so, Mr. Lotterby, but the witness is qualified to give an expert opinion, and I don't see why we shouldn't hear it. Mr. Pettit, would you say that the fire in the shop premises might have spread to the flats above and so endangered the safety of the tenants?
It might have, my lord. We got it under control just in time to prevent it spreading upstairs, but the tenants did have ample warning to get out of the building.
Then their lives were not endangered.
Well,
now, I ask you to think very carefully before you answer that question, because it relates directly to that part of the charge against the defendant which reads, being reckless as to whether the lives of the tenants of 17A Manning Street would be thereby endangered.
I would say that, as it happened, their lives were not in immediate danger. But if the fire had spread more quickly, as it might have done, or if the alarm had been given a bit later, say 10 or 15 minutes later, then some lives definitely would have been in danger.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Parsons.
Thank you, my lord. Now, to go back to the fire in the shop itself, what happened there?
And the whole place was alight. Wooden furniture burning like logs. The fire was most intense at the back of the shop. It was 15 minutes to get through into that back room.
The back room, is that part of the shop as well?
Yes, and it took another half hour to get the flames in there under control.
And was it furniture burning in there as well?
Well, it was difficult to tell what it was that was burning. But I subsequently discovered that that was where the fire had originated.
Well, how did you learn that?
Well, investigations after the fire showed that it had been burning for a longer period there because the structural damage was more severe due to the extent of charring on bulk timbers and the amount of spoiled plaster in that area.
Spoiled plaster?
Spoiled, my lord, meaning flaking off under extreme heat.
Spoiled? Oh, yes, I once had that word in a crossword puzzle.
Yes. Anything else?
Anything else?
I mean, did you notice anything else in the back room?
There's a 5-gallon drum in the corner of the room. It was scorched and discoloured and slightly buckled from the heat, but otherwise intact.
And what did it contain?
Well, it was empty. But it had contained paraffin.
Well, how did you know it had contained paraffin?
You could smell it. There was a strong smell of paraffin that side of the room, and the can itself smelled of it.
I see. And anything else about the can?
Oh, yes, the tap. The little tap at the bottom was in a diagonal position.
Meaning what?
Well, meaning that it was neither fully closed nor fully open.
Yes, but what effect would that have if the can had been full of paraffin when it was put there with the tap in that position?
There would have been a leakage.
Yes.
Paraffin would be dripping from the tap for some considerable time.
Yes. Apart from the can, was there also a paraffin heater in the room?
No?
Well, what about the front part of the shop? Was there a paraffin heater there?
No.
Was there a paraffin heater anywhere on the premises?
No, there were electric radiators.
Electric radiators? Well, what was the 5-gallon can of paraffin for?
I've no idea.
But would you say whoever set fire to the shop used this paraffin in order...
Yes, Mr. Lotterby. Mr. Parsons, you know perfectly well that it is for the jury to decide whether or not someone set fire to the shop.
I'm sorry, my lord. Perhaps I may rephrase the question.
Yes, please do so.
Mr. Pettit, would you say that however the fire was started, the paraffin in that part of the room was the reason that the conflagration spread so rapidly?
Oh, yes. Without the paraffin, there would have been a much longer period of smouldering before there was enough fire to spread. There's a fair amount of smoke with this preliminary stage of smouldering, so that often a fire is detected before it's really caught hold.
But with paraffin?
Instant flames.
Yes. Now, was there any indication that this fire had been started with the use of paraffin?
Well, with respect, it's not for me to give opinion on the origin of a fire. I mean, that's not my function. That's for the fire prevention officer.
Yes, who in this case was Divisional Officer Norman Cook.
Yes.
Yes, my lord, perhaps this is a good opportunity to introduce under Section 9 of the Criminal Justice Act 1967 Divisional Officer Cook's report.
Yes, yes. You don't object, Mr. Lotterby?
No, my lord.
I will not read the whole report, my lord. I'll just read the final sentence. Because of a shortage of evidence to indicate precisely how the fire would have arisen, accidental or otherwise, and because of the unexplained presence of paraffin, the fire can only be described as of doubtful origin. Now, do you agree with this statement by the fire prevention officer?
Yes, I do.
Of doubtful origin, meaning suspicious.
Well, not suspicious exactly.
Mr. Pettit, now surely there are only two ways that a fire can be started, either accidentally or deliberately.
Yes, my lord.
So that of doubtful origin must mean that there is an element of suspicion that the fire was caused deliberately. Well, isn't that so?
I suppose so, yes.
Thank you. No further questions, my lord.
Now, Mr. Pettit, I appreciate your reluctance to express an opinion as to how the fire was started. If one thinks of the presence of that paraffin in the back room of the shop, it would be only too easy for you to have said to yourself, so that's how someone got the fire started. But that was not your conclusion, was it?
Not definitely, no.
No, and neither was it the definite conclusion of the fire prevention officer whose written report we just heard read. Now, a few moments ago, you stated that a fire often has a preliminary period of smouldering. Is that right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, for how long a period can a fire sometimes smoulder before it breaks out in flames?
Oh, some considerable time.
Could you be more specific than that? Could the smouldering period last for, say, an hour?
Longer than that.
How long?
Several hours. In the right circumstances.
What circumstances?
Well, it would depend on the substance involved. Some substances can smoulder for a very long time.
Such as?
Carpets, rugs,
Anything else?
cushions,
Yes.
leaves, especially if the leaves are slightly damp. The same applies to hay and straw.
Any other household items?
Bedding, blankets and mattresses.
Blankets, you said?
Yes.
Was there any trace of blankets in that room?
No. Any blankets there would have been totally consumed by the fire.
It was a large square room, wasn't it? About 20 foot square, would you say?
Yes, about that.
Do you have any idea what it was used for?
Well, not at the time, but I subsequently learned it was used for storing furniture which was not on display in the front part of the shop.
Yes, for storing furniture and also for packing items ready for transportation. Now, do you happen to know how valuable antiques are packed ready for transport?
No, I don't.
Well, they are invariably wrapped in old blankets, as being the best method of avoiding scratching. So this being the case, there might have been a number of blankets in that room. So would you say that the fire could have been smouldering amongst them?
This witness is being asked a question based on a supposition put forward solely by my learned friend.
Yes, that is so, Mr. Parsons, but I have no doubt that Mr. Lotterby intends to produce later evidence that there were blankets in the room.
I do indeed, my lord.
Yes. Members of the jury will bear in mind that so far there has been no evidence produced that there were any blankets there.
Thank you, my lord. Now, Mr. Pettit, assuming for one moment that there was a pile of blankets in the back room, would you say that the fire could have been smouldering amongst them for some considerable time before it actually ignited?
Only if the blankets are in a different part of the room to the paraffin.
Yes, precisely. Now, that was the point I was coming to. And if they were, and if the fire did start among the blankets, then its origin would have had nothing whatever to do with the paraffin, would it?
Not in those circumstances.
Could have been smouldering for as much as several hours, and only when it finally reached contact with the part of the room where the paraffin was, would it have actually burst into flames. Am I right?
What is it you're asking me?
I'm asking you if, as I shall later prove, there was a pile of blankets in a different part of the room to the paraffin, then the fire could have started several hours before the fire brigade was called. In fact, it could have started before shop closing time, before 6 o'clock.
Well, it's possible, but
Thank you, that's all. No further questions, my lord.
Did you wish to add something to your answer, Mr. Pitt?
Well, only that it is possible, my lord, but I would doubt it.
Why would you doubt it?
Because if the fire had been smouldering that long, there would have been smoke. Quite a lot of smoke, which might have caught the attention of some passer-by.
Yes, I see. Do you have any re-examination, Mr. Parsons? Thank you, officer. You may go.
you.
I call Terry Green.
Terry Green, please.